Are the Phoenix Suns screwed? Probably. But is there a way out? Not so sure. Let's unpack it on another edition of Southwest Bias.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.
Of course, brought to you by Branded Bills. Elevate your brand with Branded Bills, the perfect headwear and apparel. Use code PHNX for 20% off your first order. Erik here with Steven, of course, repping PHNX Suns post-trade deadline. Really quiet time for the Suns, Steven. Not a lot going on reporting-wise, trade-wise, player-wise in Suns land.
There's not the things to be desired have been the loudest this season. And as I've hinted at, as I've said all season long, their biggest changes are going to have to come internally. And it feels like that's what we're here to kind of talk about. So
yeah, and as quiet as it was around the trade deadline, which was Jusuf Nurkic, it's been very loud in the organization or around the organization with reports about Kevin Durant being unhappy, Kevin Durant, being out on social media a lot, like so much going on about now what might become a circus here in Phoenix. But I think there's also a chance that this is the peak of the drama and maybe they get back to hoop and they kind of go on the way down as the trade deadline gets farther in the rearview mirror. So when you talk about fixing things internally, before we talk about what they have to do, I have to ask you like a very simple question. Now that we know that there are no major changes to the Phoenix Suns roster, can they be fixed internally? Absolutely,
they can. The opportunity is there. They have the pieces to do so in-house. It's just a matter of if they put themselves forth the way in which they need to for this iteration of the team to work. Can't copy and paste the way one team works to another, even if there are a few pieces that were with the teams that preceded this season. It has to be specific to this season, and that's as big of a challenge as the schedule is for this team going forward because as you said a few times before, which I completely agree with, this team is going against themselves on a nightly basis.
Yeah.
When they're not fighting themselves, they typically win, and they win in impressive, very impressive fashion and can do so against the higher level teams. And when they don't, they can falter against the bottom tier teams of the NBA.
Look at the Oklahoma City game. It's like that in one game. First half, great ball movement, great shooting from deep. Actually felt like, okay, they're going to do this. And I was going into that game saying, hey, man, they're going to win this game. Obviously, the second half happened, and within 3 minutes, you're down 15 points, right? Not sustainable, but a perfect microcosm of what this team is. And I know, I've always believed that they've had the players. Now, the players are not a perfect fit. And not nearly as good of a fit as I thought they would be going into this season, right? When we mentioned Tyus Jones, I think a lot of people were saying either A, he's going to fix everything, or B, he's not here to fix everything, but he'll still be a positive piece. Now it's kind of accepted that if Tyus Jones has a role on this team in a winning fashion, it's probably not starting for this team, right? When you came into the season, Grayson Allen coming off of leading the NBA in three-point percentage, and while he's still top 10, he's not number one, and that tip-off can hurt, right? You have Devin Booker, who's been up and down this season, and you have Mason Plumlee, who everybody assumed was an automatic upgrade over Drew Eubanks, right? And all these things now that they've played out, it's like, okay, the roster's not perfect, but at the end of the day, you still have, Steven, would you agree, one of the top duos in the league in Devin Booker and Kevin Durant?
Undeniably, unquestionably, yes. They are very much that. And for that reason, more than anything else, is why I refuse to never have some percentage of faith that they can get things the way that they need to. That talent alone, that shot-making ability alone, that shot creation for themselves and others alone is an embarrassment of riches. Anything else external to that that's positive just adds layers to that approach. But those two being at the top and the ways in which they are playoff risers always gives you a chance. The question at hand is, will they get to that point in the season where that shines through most?
Well, I think even before that, the most pertinent question is Devin Booker and an unhappy Kevin Durant one of the best duos in the league? Because I'm not saying Kevin Durant is unhappy. I need to see him play basketball, right? But on a human level, it's got to be an undeniably hard week to figure out completely blindsided that you're involved in trade conversations when you have expressed zero desire to leave. You have an argument to be a top 10 player of all time, top 3, top 2, top 1 scorer of all time, still playing at an all-star starting level, right? You have to imagine that there's a world where Kevin Durant's unhappy. We've seen the reporting. I want to see him play before making a total judgment. And even then, I don't know if I can, but everything for me about the hope of this season doing a 180 stems from the fact that you have maybe one of the most locked in competitive stretches from those two top end superstars that we've seen in either of their careers. And I don't know if that happens if one of them is not happy to be on this team.
Well, to play the devil's advocate, when we've seen KD faced with scrutiny and rightfully or not from people external or even people in his circle in terms of the team he's representing, how often have we seen him exceed even his lofty standards?
Oh, he is certainly the most I'm going to show up and hoop to the highest level that I can every night type of guy no matter what.
Oh, y'all count me out? Or y'all said I'm the biggest villain in history of sports? Or y'all call me weak? Or y'all call me soft? Okay, here's a Finals MVP. Y'all still saying that? Here's
y'all trying
another
to trade me?
Here's another Finals MVP. So again, this is someone that doesn't need external motivation in any capacity. Clearly, I mean, 15 plus years of dominance. You give him something that he can channel into even taking his game to 2 percentage points better, 1% more locked in a sustained manner.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you. I don't think I ever worry about Kevin Durant's on-court production.
I never worry about Kevin Durant, period.
I've never gone into a game and been like, oh man, Kevin Durant, watch out. You know, even when he goes through his coldest stretches, which is like for like a game or two, right, max. You never go into the next game thinking, it's the end of Kevin Durant, right? But you say you never worry about Kevin Durant, and I usually agree. And what I'm about to say is by no means saying that I wouldn't understand if he does feel this way, and this does happen because I am pro-player empowerment and pro-player movement, and I also believe that as much as I do like the new ownership of the Phoenix Suns, I like the direction that they've gone in, I like their ideals, their mindset around it. Undeniably, if you were attacking these trade rumors and trade conversations about Kevin Durant like there are reports out there that you have, I would not be surprised nor blame Kevin Durant if for the next couple of months into the offseason, the only storyline surrounding this team is Kevin Durant wants out and where does he want to go? And Kevin Durant will still show up and drop 27, 6, and 7 on the quietest night you've ever seen in your entire life. But can the rest of the team play in a sense where you feel hopeful, where you feel like, let's get to the playoffs, let's really give that extra effort? If the only thing you hear in the back of your mind is, hey, this KD, this stuff, it's over. Like, it's a matter of when, not if.
That, for me, is one of the main reasons why I still never worry about him, because he's going to make sure that the product that he's putting on the court is never in question. He has lofty standards that he gives himself before anybody else, and he holds himself up to that. And when he doesn't, he's very candidly and openly criticizing of himself when he doesn't. He's someone that's not going to approach, he's going to respect the game. And it's for that reason that regardless of what's being said from the external, what might be going on, when the ball goes up, that dude's locked in. And I don't think he'll allow for outside noise in any capacity to infiltrate his sanctuary. And because of that, he will remain the utmost asset to this team, especially in-game play. And I think that him being able to set a better tone for the team, if we're talking about internal ways to improve, the sequencing of things, him always being that rock for the team will continue to be there.
Well, and I mean, I love to be Mr. Spinzone over here. And everything that I'm saying is just hypotheticals, like what have we seen affect NBA teams before? And not, honestly, not a criticism of Kevin Durant at all, to be frank with you, but more of just like a wondering about, like, if I was in this situation on a human level, right? Like if I'm doing a show with you every day, but I know that you're gone, like I'm still going to show up and do the best show that I can. But in the back of my head, I'm going to be like, man, like that sucks. Yeah. Like, I'm not Steven, whatever. Right. And so from a human level, it's like, I could just see those type of things seeping into at least the back of people's heads and in the same way that a trade deadline would. Right.
But my rebuttal to that though And KD quite literally said this last week. Guys got to be professionals. It's part of the trade. You know what you signed up for. You still got a job to do, and your job is to come and show up for this team in the best way that you can.
Absolutely.
And I think that especially for a team that's having a reported locker room issues that the Suns are, that starts at the top. Role players are not the ones, in the most rarest of fashion, you see a role player that has the impact leadership-wise that a superstar does. But in most iterations, especially in big three iterations, it starts with the top three players. Mm-hmm. If those three players are locked in, if they're showing up a certain type of way every day, practice, game, film, and everywhere in between, the tone of the team is going to fall directly in alignment with that. But the other caveat to that, too, the coach is very much involved with that, too. Mm-hmm. So if those four pieces at the top are locked in as they should be, and they're reacting to things in games and dictating the way that they need to, the opportunity's there. If one of those four falters, you start to see little inconsistencies. If two of them happen, you see the percentages rising and not in a way that's conducive to winning games.
Absolutely. I think the only way that the season gets back on track, and by back on track, like, let's unpack that next, because what exactly is back on track for this team? What should the goal be? And in fact, let's get into all of that after I remind everybody that Southwest Bias is, of course, brought to you by our friends over at Branded Bills. Again, the perfect headwear and apparel. They have everything. Snapbacks, truckers, fitted, beanies, and tees. Branded Bills has you covered with performance and style. You want your own personal brand on a hat. You want to go out there and rep PHNX. We have our own collab with them. If people want to support us, as you know, we're a small business, man. Like we are a company that we are here for our community, and we're here for the community, and we want to rep that. So the same way that you might have a small business and you want to be represented, and you want people who support you to feel like they can go out into the real world and wear your logo, you can do that with Branded Bills. And it's not only going to look good, but it's going to feel good too. And if you want to do that for a little cheaper than what everybody else will, here's a little secret. Head to brandedbills.com, use code PHNX for 20% off your first order. Also, huge shout out to our friends over at Waymo. Steven, have you been able to go into a Waymo yet?
I have not yet, but I see them a billion times going to and from work and just generally going around Phoenix. They're everywhere.
And you know, Waymo is only operating right now in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Phoenix. So we're lucky to have Waymo.
Anybody tapping in with All-Star can tap in with Waymo as well.
That's a great, and the same thing with the Waste Management Phoenix Open. If you're watching this early, or the same thing that if you're going a night out with friends, and you need to go to Old Town, or you need to go into Phoenix, right? Like
Roosevelt Road.
Yeah, there's a lot of places.
Look at me knowing my way around.
There that you could go, and the best part about Waymo is the fact that you get in there and it's you. Or you and three of your closest friends listening to whatever music you want to listen to. It's not autonomous. There is a driver. It's autonomous. It's not driverless. Because there's a driver. It's just a remote Waymo driver. And you're also doing it good for the environment as well. All electric Jaguar I-Pace is what you're getting into. Download the Waymo One app and ride today. So I agree with everything you're saying. And everything I'm bringing up is just like, listen, I totally get what you're saying, but... Because I think that we're at this crossroads here where I don't think that the ceiling for the Suns is anywhere close to where we thought it could be. But I can see the season going really one of three ways. Way number one is, they play and continue to improve throughout the season, have like a Frank Vogel-esque end of the season where they kind of turn things around and they figure out how to use their players in a little bit better way. They have the win a game, lose a game, end up 500, mediocre, who really cares? And then they have the third option, which is vibes get so bad, team gets so distraught, players and problems that we have already seen form before this get greater, and we're talking about a team that's not even in play, in contention. What is the goal for you to look back at the end of it all after everything that's already happened and say, you know what? They actually salvaged that season.
For me, it's going to be independent of record, independent of seeding, independent of how they get to the playoffs. But getting to the playoffs is the most important thing right now. Because if you listen to them early in the season, they weren't ignoring the inevitable steps and process that they knew they would have to take. It was just a matter of how quickly they might get there and how sustainable it would be. naturally, the cliche thing is you would rather your team peak after the All-Star break than peak before. Woo, woo, that's cute. That's funny. It's cliche, like I said.
Yeah.
But it's very much true right now, too. If everything that they did going into the All-Star break gets them to this 500 pace at which they've been playing, and then they win 65, 70% of their games down the home stretch, they go into the playoffs picking up momentum, and they ride that momentum either to a top 6 seed or they ride it through the play-in tournament to ultimately get to the first round of the playoffs. So long as they duck the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I say that because that's the one team I don't think they have a chance in beating in the series.
Yeah.
If they can duck them, I don't see a reason why if they make it through the play-in and the single game elimination that is, that they can't beat Memphis Grizzlies in the first round, that they can't beat Houston Rockets. And this is someone that's watched a handful of their games. Those teams are tough, but they don't have the offense and shot-making ability that the Suns do. It's a matter of if the Suns do the things outside and around that in a sustained manner.
Yeah, and you could also argue against the Houston Rockets as from a team perspective, they blow the Suns out of the roster as far as depth goes, as far as like an identity under Ime
100%.
Udoka and execution on a nightly basis.
100%.
Would you argue the Suns have the two best players in that series?
I would not. And that is to my point that we made in the opening. You have a duo that's complementary from one another. They can also dictate and win games with one being the best and the other being 1B or vice versa. It's a dice roll in the playoffs, and when you have tough shot makers that can leverage the attention they get, that those teams will inevitably concede to them, that's a dictation piece. Most teams don't have that in the spades that the Suns do. The Suns actually have 3. We're talking about 2, but when Bradley Beal peaks, he's another player that can really add to that. That's the point in the Big 3 construct, is for the playoffs.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, one of the last things we'll touch on here, I mean, this is a great conversation. To be honest with you,
hour-long
I was going to say, to be honest with you, I wish we had more time. Obviously, we're going to have lots to unpack on the PHNX Suns show that you can catch pregame, postgame, every game, plus live shows. Total of 5 main shows a week. Pregame is a YouTube exclusive, so you're listening on audio and you don't know about pregame, make sure you come on out. Online, it's to YouTube, but still, come on out and say hi. Bradley Beal needs to start for this team if Tyus Jones starts for this team. Now, if you decide to change the starting lineup and you're just going to throw in another wing, right? Let's just say you're going to go Ryan Dunn and Royce O'Neal, Ryan Dunn and Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal. Okay, you're at least making the change to get Tyus out. If you're not doing that, Bradley Beal needs to start for this team. And I am somebody who 2 months ago or a month ago, I don't know how long it was at this point, raised my hand and was like, I think it's the right decision to put Bradley Beal on the bench, right? Given what we've seen from Tyus and how he's been exploited on the defensive end and what we've seen from Brad since he's been off the bench, if you're trying to win games, that is a decision that no questions asked has to be made for me.
My question for you, if Tyus is exiting, and I'm operating under the template of Ryan Dunn being the starting 3 for this team, which he 1,000% absolutely should be.
Agreed.
Do you start Bradley Beal or do you start Grayson Allen?
Honestly, I think I would go with Bradley Beal first. And I would see if Brad can maintain the level of production he's had off the bench. Start him, but still try to shift his minutes a little bit differently than how he was when he was starting the first time, right? And now you have Tyus who's coming off the bench, which is an interesting dynamic with Beal as well. I'd like to see that. And if he does not do that and he kind of melts away again on the offensive end more consistently, I would make the switch. And I think at that point, you know how Brad responds when he gets put to the bench. And now you have a knockdown 3-point shooter out there who doesn't need to do as much with the ball to have an impact. So that's what I would do. With that is I wouldn't full on commit to either, because I think you got to be fluid and just play who your best players are. And you're going to figure that out over the next couple of months.
My thing is with Bradley Beal, if you start him after already taking him out of the starting lineup, I don't feel like there is a point of return in this season to then bring him back. And then if it doesn't work, to then go back to him not starting
again. That's fair.
Again.
Do Grayson first just for the dynamics of it. The personality.
The dynamics of it, yes, but the 3-point shooting. You need someone that's going to spray and let that thing fly with every opportunity. I think you can employ Grayson no different than Frank Vogel did last season when he was in the starting lineup with that group. There's chemistry there between him and Devin Booker as well. I think that's important. For those reasons, I would go with Grayson Allen starting. You keep Brad in a role that's consistent, And especially with Grayson not necessarily out of the way because they'll naturally overlap in your rotation. But with Brad being the sole shooter and scorer off the bench, and you have Tyus to set him up in ways in which he wouldn't necessarily have in a starting lineup if we're talking about Tyus being removed, I think there are ample positives to come from that. So that's why I asked the question. I don't think there's a wrong answer, but there's no rebuttal to that if it doesn't work.
No,
if you put Brad in there
that
after
for
taking
sure.
him out, you feel me?
It's basically like, do you want to go like both? You feel like have their positives and their negatives, but one goes beyond a point of no return one step earlier. So you might as well give yourself the chance to figure out which one it is because you don't know what to do on the other end.
And to that point, still, I challenge people to look at things in the reverse manner instead of who's starting, whose name's getting called when they call the starting lineups. Most important time of the game is when closing. And that's the indicative point of who a coach trusts most, who vibes the best together.
Yeah, well, speaking of closing, it's closing time here, but I don't really want it to be, but you got some tacos to eat. We got a pregame show to do. We're taping this a little earlier. If you are watching this over the weekend after the Suns Jazz game and you missed the postgame show, go back, watch that. Of course, also remember, Saturday night, we also have a postgame and pregame show as well. Also, Espo talked to Tim Legler and Keith Smith post-trade deadline. Lots of awesome stuff there. If you're listening on audio and you are not aware, we post all sorts of interviews like that on our YouTube page, not going to the audio feed. So you want to make sure you get over to PHNX Sports and hit that subscribe button. Of course, Southwest Bias live twice a week on a variety of different topics, usually what's pertinent. Right now, the Suns are pertinent, which is why you got to follow the show at PHNX_Suns. You can follow Steven at StevenPG3. That is Steven with a PH. Don't you forget it. And also don't forget how to spell my name too. Okay. ErikRuby. Fantastic conversation. Genuinely enjoyed that. Let's go have another one and make sure y'all tune into that one right here on PHNX Sports and maybe again on another Southwest Bias.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.